Okay, well, I think we've got a lot of people joining, so I might get started so that we've got more time for the panel, who's going to be way more interesting than me. So we'll start with welcome to the Executive Forum and the 2021 Enactus Canada National Exposition. And thank you to all of you for joining us today. My name is Nicole Ahmed. I'm the president of Enactus Canada. And for those of you that are new to us, we're a bit of a unique organization because as our students join the organization, a transformation begins into a leader that's going to be equipped to change the world for the better. Because through all that we do, it's about helping students make a difference while discovering their potential to achieve an even greater impact as a leader of tomorrow. And one of the things that I think makes Enactus so special is the community we bring together. And despite not being together in person, today is a great example of that as we bring together student, academic, and business leaders from across the country. And we think it's a shame to have everyone here and miss an opportunity to engage everyone in discussion that's about something that's really timely and relevant right now, and especially for our audience, which is youth entrepreneurship. So we're going to begin our forum today with a panel of some inspiring leaders who are going to share their insights on youth entrepreneurship and how COVID-19's created new opportunities, both for existing businesses and new businesses. Then we're going to move to a Q&A where our participants will have an opportunity to join the discussion. And when we get to this audience Q&A period, you're going to be able to ask your questions via the chat function located at the bottom of your screen. We are using a Zoom meeting for today's session to allow for breakout rooms, but to ensure the best view when we're doing our panel discussion, I would recommend you change to speaker view, which you can do by using the view button on the top right of your screen. And while we're doing the panel, also ask that those of you not on the panel keep yourselves on mute, and then obviously be ready to turn that back on when we go into a breakout room. As we break our participants up into smaller groups and send you into breakout rooms so you can have some more focused and in-depth and one-on-one discussions with other people here. So to help make it easy on our team as we split everyone up into breakout rooms, I am going to ask you to rename yourself as follows. For students, please put your full name followed by your school. And for business leaders, I ask that you name yourself with your full name followed by your company. And then after we wrap up the executive forum, those of you serving as final round judges will give you all the information you need to move to that final round of competition. Shaw Business, one of our newest partners, recognizes the potential in our students and their ability to address complex challenges facing our communities coast to coast. Together through today's forum and a new project accelerator that we're launching with them this fall, we will build a more inclusive, resilient, healthy, and connected Canada through the power of youth entrepreneurship. So please join me in welcoming our presenting sponsor, Shaw Business, to the network. Always exciting to have a new partner join. And I'd like to invite Catherine Emberley, President Business at Shaw Communications, to kick off the forum. Catherine will also be joining our panel later this morning, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to introduce you to her. Catherine's been a leader at Shaw since 2004 and has held a variety of senior leadership roles across the organization, including marketing, operations, corporate communications, and public relations. And prior to joining Shaw, Catherine worked at several top advertising agencies and holds a Bachelor of Science in Home Economics degree from the University of Alberta. In 2012, she completed a Harvard Business School CATM Executive Leadership Program and is a certified advertising agency professional. She also sits on the board of directors for Calgary Economic Development and is a member of the Calgary Sports and Major Events Committee reporting into Tourism Calgary. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you, Nicole. It is so nice to be here. And like everybody, I think I wish we were in person, but we'll take technology where we can. You know, I had an opportunity to judge Enactus a couple of years ago in Vancouver, and I was absolutely blown away by the presentations and the focus on people, planet, and profit. And so we decided at that time to get involved. And so we're really excited to be launching the Shaw Business Youth Entrepreneur Project Accelerator, which will help all of these teams really develop their entrepreneurial skills and create businesses of the future. Shaw itself is a great entrepreneurial story, and our founder, J.R. Shaw, started the company 50 years ago himself from nothing, and it has grown into be an amazing company with over 10,000 people and very successful. And JR never forgot his entrepreneurial roots and always invested in the next generation of entrepreneurs. And annually at Shaw, we support over 7,000 youth entrepreneurs and through our community partners. And we've helped accelerate over 165 businesses. We've raised over 35 million in venture capital and created over 250 local jobs. So really passionately supporting this part of the economy. In Shaw Business, we really believe that small business, and our focus is on small business, drives the Canadian economy. And when you look at what it's going to take to recover from COVID in Canada, business and small business is really it, and the youth are going to help drive that. So super excited to help support and participate in the conversation today. So to lead us through, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Rob Myatt. He's our Vice President of Enterprise Service Provider and Carrier Solutions at Shaw. Rob, over to you to start the conversation.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Catherine. And I am really honored to be here with everyone today. I love today's forum topic, new opportunities for young entrepreneurs. And Catherine mentioned a moment ago about the JR story and how we built Shaw. I thought I'd spend just a moment on that. For those of you that maybe watched TV back in the 70s, or, you'd wake up in the morning as a young kid, you'd watch those, all the color bars on the screen. And JR recognized back in Sherwood Park, back in the late 60s, early 70s, that there wasn't a lot of choice. And so his idea of bringing more choice to consumers for TV is what began Shaw Communications. And now, for those that saw the announcements over the last couple of months here, Shaw's about to be acquired for $26 billion. And it all started with that first single customer. We've got pictures of it on the wall at our corporate office of that first customer installation. So, just the seed of opportunity, I think, is what drives entrepreneurship across this country and around the world. I'd like to think that most entrepreneurial opportunities come out of change, or in business out of a changing market dynamic, ultimately creating market opportunity. So let's look at the current pandemic environment. COVID continues to drastically affect every facet of our lives. As we look to leave the pandemic behind us in the months ahead, this forum will discuss how economic disruptions like COVID can actually create new opportunities for our youth. So could the pandemic be incubating a boom in the next generation of entrepreneurship? It's hard to exactly say, but it sure looks like something is happening. Experts say that crises have historically fostered entrepreneurship. For ambitious young people, it all combines to produce one of the greatest lessons in entrepreneurship. Unpredictable times are rife with opportunity. Anytime you have a big change, whether that's an economic downturn or something like COVID, it brings up new needs. And needs are at the foundation of a startup, right? If you don't address a need, you don't have a business. When everything just goes along the same as always, it's harder to find new opportunities. Startups also benefit in downturns because resources like talent and office space become cheaper or more accessible. And that's partly why we've seen a whole virtual economy spring up during the pandemic around grocery shopping or healthcare and work. Futurepreneur Canada is a not-for-profit organization that provides financing, mentoring, and support tools to aspiring business owners, noted that a number of startups and their programs jumped nearly 40% in the third quarter of 2020 compared with the same period last year. Their CEO, who's going to actually join us shortly, says there are people who never would have imagined going into entrepreneurship, and all of a sudden their traditional job doesn't seem as secure as it used to. And then there's also other people who always dreamed of starting a business, but they were just looking for that perfect time and the right opportunity. So to help us dive into the discussion even further, I am pleased to introduce our executive panel. So please, executive panel, give us a wave as I read out your names. We'll start with Catherine Emberley, our president of Shaw Business. We met at Catherine earlier, but please help us welcome Catherine back. Catherine, if you want to give a wave. Awesome, thank you. I'd like to introduce Karen Grieve-Young. She's the Chief Executive Officer of Futurepreneur Canada. And as CEO of Futurepreneur Canada, Karen helps create success stories for young entrepreneurs. Futurepreneur Canada is a national nonprofit that's helped over 13,000 young entrepreneurs launch businesses that contribute to sustainable economic development in their communities and for Canada. Prior to joining Futurepreneur in 2018, She led corporate development and partnerships at Mars Discovery District and previously worked in San Francisco, New York, and London at organizations including Bain & Company, Gap Inc., and the UK's Institute of Cancer Research. Karen serves on the board of Ovarian Cancer Canada, and she holds an MBA from Stanford University and a BA in economics from Harvard. Karen, if you want to give us a wave. Welcome, Karen. Thank you. Next, we have Blair Forrest, the founder of AMZ Prep. I'm sure people have already seen Blair's face based on his experience last year. He's the founder of AMZ Prep, an organization that helps brands sell on Amazon's marketplace through their network of warehouses across North America. Last year, Blair was named the 2020 Student Entrepreneur National Champion when he beat out hundreds of other applicants from across the country. Blair, if you want to give us a wave, please. Awesome. And lastly, Susan Henry, Manager of Community Investments at Alterna Savings and Alterna Bank. Susan has over 20 years experience in the microfinance arena. Susan was instrumental in leading the launch of Alterna Savings Community Microfinance Program and the Community Loan Funds Partnership Programs. Susan's leadership in the field of community economic development in Canada has advised policymakers and practitioners in microfinance and social finance tools. She continues to consult and lend her expertise to organizations starting community loan fund programs with a focus on small business and social enterprise development. Her work in developing programs that address the growing divide of financial accessibility of racialized Canadians has led to her most recent work in participating in the design of Black Entrepreneurship Loan Fund with the federal government, financial institutions, and Black business service organizations. Welcome, Susan, if you want to give us a wave. Awesome. Thank you to all of our panelists for stepping into the hot seat for the discussion. Okay, we've got a great and diverse group of leaders here, and I know our audience is keen to hear their views on the topic, so let's dive in. We'll start with maybe Catherine and Blair. Can you tell us how your business has adapted and made changes to capitalize on the economic disruptions brought on by COVID-19? Catherine, we'll start with you.
Sounds good. I say to everybody, COVID-19 for anyone in business was like getting an MBA in the last year, and man, did we all learn a lot. And so, what we really saw was an acceleration of a lot of existing trends. So, so much work has been done on digital, self-serve, and moving everything in that direction. And what we saw is literally overnight adoption rates all of a sudden go into those populations who might have been a little bit resistant. So from that perspective, really successful. I would say the people front too, we had the world's largest work from home trial last year. And I think everyone's been really pleasantly surprised with how well that's worked. So certainly flexible work life is going to be a change. I don't think that ever goes back. And the technology behind that for work at home, what businesses need to be thinking about from security, et cetera. I think we also learned we've got to take care of our communities, and it's a part of our business, and we owe that, and that comes back to you in spades from your customers. Also saw lots of demand for, our network demands went up 100% overnight, and all of a sudden you saw peak capacity 24 hours a day. We were really excited and proud of the performance of our network, but certainly some challenging days in there. So I think the technology adoption is not going back, and so that's really what we've seen.
Awesome, thanks, Catherine. We'll pose the same question over to Blair, and I know, Blair, when I think about your business starting a few years ago, half of your business has been around pre-COVID, and half of your business has been around during COVID. So maybe same question for you. What has changed for AMZ Prep over your 3-year history?
Yeah, it's a great point. And I just graduated in December, so I may have officially also got the MBA, as Catherine said. But so we're in the Amazon space. So I'm just adding what Catherine said. A lot of brands knew they needed to sell online or enter a marketplace like Amazon. And we basically saw them just get pushed into a corner. It wasn't a if or when, it was more do or die for a lot of these brands, was a very scary thing for these organizations. We were listed as an essential business. So because we do warehousing and fulfillment, we were listed as open throughout the entire pandemic. So what our warehouse and operations look like from us labeling products and listening to music turned into full-fledged distribution for medical companies, for grocery and essential goods. And we were doing 24-hour shifts essentially just to try to keep up with demand, because we were distributing to local hospitals, we were distributing to local grocery stores. So it was, and while I was still in school, you guys can imagine balancing that in exams was quite the task of its own. And I think the other really exciting thing was that a lot of brands needed to get to Amazon. So we saw a huge rate of small retail companies, whether it's in Toronto or across the world, that look to us to guide them onto the Amazon marketplace and say, guys, no one can come to my retail store and they need to purchase tomorrow. How can we get onto this online ecosystem? Brands that have had no prior experience to the online world, and basically overnight we were looking to digitize their business. So similar to Catherine's growth, we end up thriving, especially from a acceleration around 3 times our growth rate, specifically over the past 15 months. So I think a roller coaster is an understatement.
No kidding. Holy moly. Thanks for sharing, Blair. Okay, so we know that this past year has been tough on businesses of all sizes, but it's also been tough on individuals on staying focused and on staying motivated. So maybe I'll throw the next question over to Karen and Susan. What advice would you give to the young entrepreneur on how to stay confident and positive when you're faced with uncertainty, disruption, all these market changes? Karen, why don't you start, given your role directly with these young entrepreneurs?
Well, I think the first thing is to start with what's in your control. I think one of the things that was so challenging about the pandemic and continues to be is that so much is outside of your control. We have supported hundreds of hairdressers in Ontario. They are closed. That is outside of their control. But what is within their control? How they manage their staff, what they can do on the side, how they can prepare for next. So I think that's a big part of it, is what's within your control and what can you do. And then the second is reaching out for advice, because everyone's trying to pivot and come up with creative solutions. One of the most vibrant things that we had going on in the first few months was a forum and a combination of webinars, but then chats between our entrepreneurs. We have 3,000 active entrepreneurs right now who currently have Futurepreneur loan and mentorship support. And they were helping each other out. They're not direct competitors. And so reaching out to others and sharing answers, sharing best practices, or maybe the least bad options available to them, I think was really helpful, and also created some support. Entrepreneurs, it's a really lonely journey. And so whatever entrepreneurs can do to feel less alone, particularly in the hard times, whether it's a mentor or a peer, is really helpful.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah, not being alone and being part of a greater community. We're all in this together. Awesome. Okay, same question for you, Susan. And just to repeat, what guidance would you give to young entrepreneurs to stay confident and motivated?
Yeah, I mean, we always say, I see this in our microfinance program. We talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and, I always say, we can't get away from uncertainty. And as an entrepreneur, you're going to face many adversities, and that's going to impact the operations of your business. And sometimes sort of question your ability to run that business, like we're seeing now. So, I have 4 things. First, you need to ask yourself what matters most in your business. What do I have control of? And what can I manage at this time and work towards achieving those pieces? You also need to be real with yourself. You have to set realistic goals and targets at this time. I had a young entrepreneur, who went through his business financials with me. And after a few years, he said, it's taken a lot of losses to get that W or win. And after that, he started to see his business growing. And during this time, especially in this pandemic, he said, the wins were not coming. And it was really important to surround himself and the team with others who understood the journey that they were going through. And these people can be a source of motivation. They can help inspire you, and they're real. They're not going to judge you. And it's a safe space when you surround yourself, with like-minded individuals. And, last, and sometimes this can sound cliche, but you need to believe that you can do it. You need to visualize it and always bring it back to what motivates you. Because, when you have that positive outlook, it's going to go a long way to your mental well-being.
Awesome. Thanks, Susan. Love the different perspectives. In fact, enough so I think we'll go to the other panelists as well and ask the exact same question. Maybe over to you next, Catherine. What advice would you offer?
Oh, I think it's, we've seen so many ups and downs, and I think what Karen and Susan talked about in having a network and people around you, because we've all had moments through this pandemic where you've felt energized or exhausted. And so you need those people that you can reach out at those times where you need energy and where you have energy to give. And so we really at Shaw focused on making sure we kept a very close eye on all of our teams, all of our partners and our customers, and whenever we could reach out and give energy to people. So, there's always another twist and turn in this thing that we've experienced. And so I think it's just understanding there's ups coming, and to keep focused towards the future.
Thanks, Catherine. And I know you and I work fairly closely together. I always think that by giving energy to others, it actually brings energy to yourself as well. It's amazing how that works. Blair, earlier when we introduced ourselves to each other, learning that you've grown a company over 3 years into 35 people, that's massive growth. So maybe you can give us a little insight into how you would answer the question, what advice you would give having seen such tremendous growth over such a short period of time.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. And I'm still taking notes from everyone else speaking on some of these key ones here. So I'm trying to learn some stuff too. But one of the things I think was really helpful, especially coming from, let's say, for context, last January we were at 3 employees. So the trying to bring it on that, I think I can emphasize building a dream team. I think is incredibly powerful. Whether that's employees or if it's mentorships, I like the idea of saying a dream team, not just kind of a team or a house of members. Is that the idea of a dream team was that when I got our first employee, there was a different sense of responsibility. I think having that and almost having someone else not only just rely off you through a company that you're building, but also to look at you as to be the leader and to try to navigate the waters that we're trying to figure out. I like the analogy of when we're starting to build this company, we started off almost as like a pirate ship, right? So we were very scrappy with our processes. It was, we were navigating whatever waters came our way and whatever waves hit us. And now we're almost building a Navy fleet, right? And kind of visualizing that of starting the business off however you can, right, to make it work, and then transitioning it to be a Navy fleet of processes and systems. It's a very exciting thing. I think the last point, which is super exciting, is over time, I think whether I've wanted to or not, I've had to almost just be in love with the process. So the end goal has always been something in mind, but I think over the past year, trying to figure out what the goalposts are, it's been pretty difficult to navigate. So just loving the process allowed me to focus more on the day-to-day versus trying to just figure out the outcome, which is get me really motivated to just figure out what fire I need to fight the next day.
Awesome. Thanks, Blair. It's the analogies you gave in a smaller organization. I'll tell you, they're consistent in big organizations as well. We are often scrappy no matter our size. And even though for many on the call here that know who Shaw is, we're a pretty large organization, but the world has changed. We are now in a global marketplace. Borders are not what they once were. And so the competitors today to all of us is different than they would have been 20 years ago. Awesome. Well, let's move on to our next topic. Thanks everyone for your contributions there. So there's a new term, ESG, environmental, social, and governance. It's becoming an increasing focus for business. So we'll start with maybe Karen and Catherine. How does an economic disruption like COVID-19 change a company's strategy with ESG? Do priorities need to shift back to profits first? Catherine, maybe you can kick us off.
Yeah, I really don't think so. And I don't think ESG and profit are an or, I think they're an and. And I think when ESG is done with a lot of thought, you can actually drive both your practices and your bottom line. So an example for us would be, optimizing driving routes of trucks that are going around the city. When we do that, it helps us reduce emissions, but it also drives efficiency. Things like solar energy on the top of head-end roofs that we've been doing, same thing. Giving back to community. So when we do things like this, yes, does it have an altruistic piece to it? But then I also hope that some of you walk away with good feelings about Shaw. And when you're, driving thriving businesses and need services, you'll think about our brand. And then finally, diversity of teams. I'm so passionate about that. And we have seen firsthand when you drive diversity of your teams, your customers, your board, it does drive higher performance. So I do think the ESG practices ultimately strengthen businesses, and we don't have to make those decisions on profit or ESG.
Awesome. Thanks, Catherine. So Karen, working with young entrepreneurs who are setting up their business plans and seeking funding, what have you seen?
Can I start by just saying ditto? I agree with what Catherine just shared. And I think, I think not only is it and not or, but really if you lead with your values and you lead with how you work and your why of what you mean to do, yeah, the profits we're not for profit, so we don't have profits, but the economic outcomes will come and the impacts will come. I think what we saw last year is some of our entrepreneurs who were the most successful were the ones who doubled down on community. And I'll give one example I love. I today of Zabelle Designer Shoes. She was immediately impacted because people were not buying designer shoes, and all of her shoes were made in Italy. So she immediately started off by saying, "I am not going to cut my orders from my manufacturers in Italy because I depend on them. They're part of my corporate family. I need to keep supporting them." But then there were these healthcare workers in Canada who were working so hard. And so she started a Walk How You Want campaign and had people identify the healthcare workers who they were most inspired by, share the stories on social media, and then she gave them each a pair of her sandals. Now, that's hard to afford to do, but the lift that she got from it, I think it really increased her brand awareness. She cared passionately about what she was doing. And our first ever female finance minister for Canada was wearing Zabelle shoes when she delivered the budget this year. There's a tradition of always wearing shoes. And so, that's one example. Others are to pivot to where opportunities are, and the opportunities help. Canadian Shield is a PPE company that's spun out of Futurepreneur supported Inksmith, which was an education technology company. So that's another great example. The final that I do want to note is the diversity, equity, and inclusion point. I've been with Futurepreneur for 3 years, and for about 2.5 of those, we've been pushing really hard in terms of aligning our values to, frankly, our entrepreneurs, who are an incredibly diverse group. And I find that the more we strive to have diverse leadership at all levels, improve our offerings, which we recently did for Black entrepreneurs and Indigenous entrepreneurs in recognition of credit barriers, and taking other steps that meet the needs of entrepreneurs and recognize the inequities of the playing field and then try to respond to that. Not only are we getting better outcomes and supporting more inclusively, which is our entire mandate, but frankly, our team loves it. And we found that actually our approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion are the #1 driver of our staff's engagement, right? So it does come together. That's not why we're doing it, but that is a vital part of who we are. So we see it in our entrepreneurs, we see it in our own team, and our engagement actually is getting higher and higher despite how hard it is for everyone to work from home. So it's been an incredibly challenging and incredibly rewarding time. And I think to the original ESG versus profits, I think the companies that tried to focus on profits this year to the exclusion of ESG is going to come back to bite them. And I think it should.
Very well said. Thanks, Karen. So we're going to think a little bit more broadly here. And before we open up the forum to questions from the audience, maybe one final question. We've got some incredible future leaders and entrepreneurs in the room today. So I'll ask maybe every panelist to share what's some of the best advice you've ever received in your career in business. When I think about myself, I think about the coming together of two iconic companies, Rogers and Shaw. Ted Rogers once was known to be said, the best is yet to come. That's where he hung out. It's always trying to create something new and better for people, which, I think parallels a lot of what Karen just shared. And then JR was about the golden rule, do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Operate your business that way and profits will just come. And certainly there's been success in that. So maybe I'll ask each of the panelists to share some advice share what advice you've received over your career that have helped make you successful. Maybe we'll start with Blair.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I think there's been a few, and I don't know if they're always the most formal, but there were ones that, whether it was in passing or it was something that during a late night conversation I ended up figuring out. One of them that I really like using is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think that this past year's been a kind of a tried testament of this, but you will never know enough. And I've learned this while trying to build a company, is that you'll always be forced to make decisions without really fully understanding what's coming, this year specifically. And as a founder, I think it's just something you have to get comfortable with, whether you like it or not. So I think that's a great statement. The other one I like specifically as more of a student entrepreneur is finding the balance, right? I think specifically in my scenario, and I know a lot of students can relate, just graduating from Laurier a few months back, is that trying to build a business in my third year of university, right, while still studying for exams, while still having any sort of relationship, and then on top of everything, trying to transition to an online world for learning, it's a lot. It's incredibly overwhelming, and I know for a lot of students, when I started, it didn't feel like there was enough people doing it. But as I got more into the space and learned about things like Enactus and all the other locations where I can help learn from people, there's a lot of people there, right, and a lot of people to support. So I think regardless, it's never lose sight of the important stuff while trying to build a business, even though there's a lot happening. Love, friends, family. I think these are things that I know we're also passionate about our businesses, and I'm an exact example, but just trying to take a step back and finding that balance between the two, almost the Zen, you can call it. I think it's incredibly important, and I'm still trying to thrive to figure it out, but I'm doing better every day.
Thanks, Blair. And I like, you shared earlier that you're still learning. You're clearly very successful, yet you're still learning. You're still writing down things. I can tell you, I've been doing this for 25 years, and I got my book beside me, writing down ideas and things I'm learning, even in instances like what I'm hearing from the panel today. So thanks for sharing. Let's go to Susan. What business advice have you received?
Yeah, actually, the business advice I received came from my 26-year-old son, when he sort of gave me 3 words: know your worth. And so personally, I'm an extremely caring person by nature, and that could be a good trait, but I don't always put enough value on my accomplishments and achievements. So my son said to me one day, "Mom, why don't you ever highlight that Harvard University invited you to participate in, a microfinance program?" And I said to him, "Well, I go into underrepresented communities to speak, and having that on my bio makes me feel very uncomfortable." And my son said, "Well, stop undervaluing yourself for others. In fact, it would be more of an inspiration." And as I see many entrepreneurs today, they're undervaluing themselves as well in terms of their pricing. In terms of, what they're charging for their products and their time. And I see this especially with women entrepreneurs. So I would say really know your worth.
Awesome. Thank you. I love the concept of, what you just said about being uncomfortable, bringing back to Blair, being comfortable with being uncomfortable truly resonates probably with our entire audience. Thanks for sharing. Let's move over to Karen.
Excellent. And yes, I lifted my iPad. I am taking notes on the comments from the other panelists. I think a couple things for me. One is to know your why, know what your values are. You'll be forced to make choices in your career, in your business, and the right ones will always be aligned with your values and with your why. And if something's making you uncomfortable and it feels misaligned, it's probably not the right path. Going along with that, we've been talking about peers, we've been talking about mentors, and I think whether it's peer advisors or mentors, they're really important. It's so helpful to get that input and advice from others. Again, though, it comes back to your why. You take all the advice in, but ultimately you have to make the decisions. And if you follow your instincts and you follow your gut, I think you'll make the right decision. It's not always obvious. The right path doesn't usually come, emblazoned with fireworks or lighting. But if you really think and follow your gut and your instincts, you'll probably follow the path that's right for you or right for your business, and you know best. And so I think those are the key. And then the final that goes again with those, it's a bit of a continuum, is not to confuse experience with aptitude. And this kind of goes with Susan's point of, know your value. Others may have more experience in an area, but that doesn't make them better. It just makes them experience at what exactly that is. What each of you bring and what we all bring that is uniquely ours has huge value and shouldn't be underestimated just because someone else may either have more experience or talk louder. So.
That's a great setup for the questions that coming out to our actual audience, in that no one should be shy in asking questions, and we'll get to those in just a minute here. So lastly, maybe Catherine, if you want to share any insights you have on advice.
Yeah, I think the best piece of advice I was ever given was to chill out. And so, I think when you're coming out of university, there's so much pressure on yourself and what you're supposed to be and what job you're supposed to have and how your career path is supposed to be linear. And I think for me, I put so much pressure on myself in my early years that it actually held me back, because I had an image of what I thought I was supposed to be, and I wasn't actually my authentic self. And so when I actually began to relax a little bit in it and be open and be myself, is actually when my career really started off. When I was in university, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I think we have this unrealistic expectation that you're supposed to know at 18 or 19 exactly what the rest of your life is going to be. So my advice is to chill out, relax into it, enjoy the experience, and say yes to the opportunities that come across your plate, and be all in the moment and pick up those skills and be open to what the next step is. Because, I think as soon as I relaxed into that journey, it just got more fun, more enjoyable, and my career opportunities really exploded. So take a little pressure off yourselves.
Love it. Thank you. Okay, thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts. Our audience has been very patient, and I'm sure we're all eager to start asking some questions. So if you want to open up your chat dialogue on the right side, there's a click button on the Zoom link there. And please, maybe just for ease, direct your questions directly to me, Rob Mai at Shaw Communications, and I will start going through the questions and then randomly pick our panelists to help us answer them. So I will just wait for them to start coming in. Okay, let's start with a question from Cody. What is the biggest risk you have taken, and how did it work out? Blair, I'm sure you've taken risks over the past few years. You want to kick us off with how you would answer that question?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think so. When I was first starting all this like Amazon stuff, I used to sell these like baby products on Amazon. So that's actually how I got started. So when like my first and second year of university, to try to figure out how I was gonna to get like the weekend money, I was selling these like baby products on Amazon, but I was shipping them to my university dorm. And you can imagine it wasn't the coolest conversation to have with the girls when I was shipping these baby caddies. So I tried to keep it as kind of as quiet as possible. But what ended up happening was that it was growing really quickly, and I was kind of in a rock and a hard place where that I didn't have anywhere to start growing the company, and I was thinking about doing this whole warehousing idea. So in my third year of university, I started looking at warehouses. And obviously, while still in university, I had no car to even get to the warehouse. I found a place in Kitchener. It was around an hour bus ride away. And after it was like 3 to 4 weeks of contemplating it, I think it was around like $300 a month. But at that time, that felt like $1 million to try to spend that. I end up just kind of taking a leap of faith. And I don't know why. I know I don't know if it was confidence with myself or something I've never really put all my energy into anything before. So I ended up purchasing that warehouse, which I was really on the fence about. And then that ended up leading to kind of this kind of waterfall effect of all the other things that end up happening. So it all started with somehow connecting baby caddies to jumping in the deep end and saying, I'll build my parachute on the way down. Let me just buy this first warehouse, and whether I'm going to use it as a study room or I'm going to use it as a warehouse, I'll figure that out in a few months.
That's risk. Thanks. And maybe Susan, I'll pose the same question to you, because I'm sure you live and breathe risk every day as you analyze what are you going to fund. So what's a big risk that you took in your business? I think Susan, you might be on mute.
Yes, sorry about that. You know, as the person who helped Alterna develop the microloan program, you know, when I think about risk, you know, the risk for Alterna was, you know, we are lending to individuals who, you know, they don't have demonstrable cash flows, right? They're startup businesses. And what does that mean? Because these are definitely opportunities that other financial institutions don't take advantage of. But, you know, we look at that risk as an opportunity to help individuals become economically and financially included. And, you know, when you look at it at the different levels of the entrepreneur, you know, we're helping them create income. We're helping them create productivity. We're helping them become self-sufficient. So, you know, we don't look at that as a risk, because it can also be a win-win for an organization like Alterna. The more we help these entrepreneurs succeed, you know, the better it is going to be for us as an organization and for our community and society on a whole. And, you know, I always have a saying, if we provide the education that's needed to these entrepreneurs, the end result is they're going to become sophisticated, what I call borrowers. And now they're going to go on to own in more assets. And that's a win-win for all. So, you know, I think the risk as an, I'll call myself an entrepreneur or entrepreneur, is diverted by the, you know, what we get out of helping entrepreneurs.
Awesome. Thanks, Susan. Okay, we'll take a question from Jaden here. And she says, I know for me as a leader, keeping my team motivated, engaged was a challenge this year. So what were your strategies to not only keeping yourselves motivated, engaged, but your team as well? Catherine, I know you lead nearly 1,000 people. So let's start with you. How have you managed to keep 1,000 people motivated through the last year?
Yeah, well, Rob, you had a front row seat to my constant cheerleading. And so, you know, it was my #1 priority. And I think when I thought about all the things that were happening in the pandemic, the one thing that I could do is take care of my people. And so my #1 piece was to communicate and to do everything that we needed, both personally and professionally, for our people. And so we had technology, and so we communicated constantly. So, you know, I had multiple meetings with my direct team and then my entire team, and even, you know, once a week. We also tried to do some fun things too. And I think people really needed some social release. And so, we did goofy talent shows and ridiculous things. We ship things to people's homes, and we tried to do everything that we could to maintain personal contact. But I would say my favorite one that we do is called Mindset Mondays. And so it's an optional meeting for everyone every Monday morning at 8:30. You dial in and everyone takes a turn hosting it, but it's 15 minutes of something motivational. And it could be, I've done a gratitude practice, someone did meditation. It could be, what I've learned from my triathlon practice. And so it's an awesome, uplifting way for people to start their weeks off and connect. And so have done a bunch of things like that, but it has taken a tremendous amount of energy as this has gone on and on. But I think we've done a good job, and we've maintained like very high employee engagement throughout the pandemic.
Awesome, thanks, Catherine. Maybe I'll put the next question at Karen. So, you've helped, I think it was over 13,000 entrepreneurs find success. That must have been a huge demand on your time. So our question from Xander is, what are the best ways you have found to balance time?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I like the last question. No, I'm kidding. So I've not helped 13,000. I will admit, we helped about 1,000 over the last year. But I should say those are 1,000 new companies starting. We also needed to help the entrepreneurs who already launched and were in crisis. So we had top-up loans and other offerings for our current entrepreneurs last year. I think the most important thing you can do is make sure that you remember that you don't have to do it all yourself. So when you're thinking about balancing time, there's advice that I got, only do what only you can do to some extent. I mean, on the one hand, you have to chip in and do whatever needs being done as a team, but that doesn't mean that each person on the team has to do everything. So figure out what needs to be done. And for me, what I realized is that I'm working into the evening on a very personal note. I'm working into the evening every single day. And so I've started not scheduling my first meeting until 10. So that meaningful Monday, that motivation Monday wouldn't work for me, because I need my personal time in the morning. I might be working, but I'm kind of working on my terms and I'm not on Zoom. And that has worked really well. It's walks and other things. I think the other thing, I mentioned balancing who does what. Other people have better answers, right? So one of the things that our employees have loved this year is, we have a Fun Friday theme that one of our team members in St. John's, Newfoundland does every other Friday, where our team all gets engaged. Some of our entrepreneur activities and supports came from members of our team. If we were reliant on only my answers, we wouldn't be coming up with the best solution. So it's sort of really being open to and embracing the ideas that different people have, and that will increase your own bandwidth too. But there's advice that I actually got on another panel. So I do take notes from these panels, and I think it's great leadership advice. It's, you can't fill others' cups if your cup is empty. So, and it can be so hard to take that time. For me, honestly, saying I won't have meetings before 10 a.m. felt so counter to who I am. But at the same time, I realized that in order to have reserves for our team and for our entrepreneurs, I had to be able to do that. And so I think it was Andrew who asked the questions. There are no easy answers. I'd love to hear what the panel's ideas are, but those are some ideas.
Thanks for sharing, Karen. I was once given some advice that there are things that are urgent and there are things that are important. And I've chosen that if it's not both, it doesn't have to happen today. And that certainly helped me in determining what needs to get done. Maybe it's an important question, so I'll throw it out to any of the other panelists if you want to share. How do you manage time in this environment?
I loved what Karen had to say there. And I think, one thing that I've really embraced, even pre-pandemic, was not feeling guilt for what you're choosing to do at the time. And so, I've got 2 young kids. And so when I go to their school, I don't feel guilty about not about missing a meeting. And when I have an important business meeting and I can't be at something, I don't feel guilt for that. If I choose to exercise in the morning and take the time, I don't feel guilt. So make your decisions. I think guilt is the most useless emotion of all. It doesn't get you anywhere. So just make your decisions and be in that moment and stop beating yourself up about everything.
Love that. Thanks. Anyone else?
I think one or two things is more on the, I think, student related ones. So I think there's tons of value there, but a big thing that I learned just going through university and trying to balance everything was like the time batching. I think, yeah, Catherine, Karen, you guys got really solid points there. I think I'm trying to do a lot better with those things too, like not being so pressured to think that I have to do it. I think I'm still trying to get a lot better at it, but the one thing I've gotten down is almost just like time batching. So kind of looking at your calendar throughout the entire day, or using a tool like Notion or something like that to basically just really allocate it. Because I had the same issue where my days turn to evenings and my mornings turn to afternoons. It gets very blended. So having these kind of time batches that at the end of the day, I can actually review and say, wow, I've accomplished so much today. And you can actually just sit back and see everything that you've done. Because I think there's a lot of days where we accomplish so much, but we feel like we accomplish so little. So it's almost like those small reflection points that make all the difference and allow me to sleep a little bit better at night.
Awesome. Thanks, Blair. Now, we're getting thousands of questions here, but looking at the time, I think we have time for one more. So I'll pick one here from Hannah. She says, I have a question for the three amazing women on this panel, with so much respect for Blair. As women, how do you ensure your voices are heard in a professional space while also ensuring respect from your male counterparts? Great question. Catherine, we'll start with you.
This is my life's journey, and I am my thing I'm most passionate about, as Rob knows because he hears it all the time, is women in leadership. And what I want is to open the door for more women. And I think for me, I'm excited for this next generation because it's changed dramatically. When I started in business 25 years ago, it was very, very different and to how it is today. And so I'm really excited for the next generation because I don't think you've got quite the same barriers to knock down, but there's still many rooms where I walk into and I'm the only woman. And what I really think needs to happen is we need more women in the room. And so we need more women in leadership and more women at the table. It's hard when you're the voice at the table. It's a whole lot easier when you've got some friends behind you. So one of the things I try to do is I try to amplify unheard voices. And it's not just women, it's different cultural groups. It's just people that aren't as loud. And so when you hear someone bring up a point, often that point gets taken by a louder voice in the room. So I try to amplify it. So I would say, hey, Blair, that's an amazing idea. Tell us more about it. And we can all do that in the room. I'm lucky to have a loud voice in the room now, so I can help amplify other voices. But I would just be, get in there. Don't be shy. You've got good ideas. Be heard. And I think it's just, pull up the seat to the table. And I think, more and more voices are wanting to be heard, and we want diverse opinions at the table. So don't doubt yourself.
Thanks, Catherine. Susan?
Yes, great question. And, I echo everything Catherine say. As a woman and as a Black woman, and I have to pronounce that, it's really important to have a voice at the table. And what I aspire to do is bring others along with me. So I'm trying to carve a path for others behind me so they can surpass me. That's very important. I spend a lot of my time participating and sitting on panels like this and others so that I can be the voice, I can be representation for women and for racialized women. Because, we all need that inspiration. I need to see the other leaders so I can aspire like them. And I know the ones behind me need that. And it was also for this reason that, Help Me created another program for Alterna, which we call our Working Women Business Loans, because we knew the challenges that women face in getting financing. And it was for that reason that we added that to the existing program that we have. So yeah, you know, my role is to amplify the voice, and be the inspiration for other generations.
Awesome. Thanks, Susan. Karen.
So I want to say ditto again. I agree with everything Catherine and Susan shared. I think when it comes to the table or the organization or the podium, I would say it's interesting. I actually find myself with women quite a lot. I'm in the not-for-profit world and in the circles I choose to be in. It's not often that I'm the only woman. It is often that all of the women are white. And so I think it's incumbent on women who, where that's our only known barrier, to call it out, right? So be on the podium and say, like, just so I'm clear, just so we're clear, this podium is not diverse just because we have people with Y chromosomes and people without Y chromosomes. Like, it's not diverse. And I think that that's important. And what we found is that honestly, you just have better, richer discussions and make better decisions when you have more diverse perspectives. Like, just full on out, it's more fun. It's just better in every single way. So I think that's it from a professional perspective. And I agree with Susan 100%. Bring people along, right? Like, pay it forward. You know, pick diverse mentees where you'll learn from them and they'll be able to come with you. The other advice I'll give, which isn't about the table, and this might be controversial, but pick your partner well, right? Like, for people who are going through life with a partner, and that's not all of us, but that is my situation. You know, who you choose as your partner for your personal life, hopefully, if you choose to take that path, or if that's a path for you, choose someone who will lift you and who will support you and who will treat your career equally to theirs, where you're not taking a second seat. I think we've seen so much of that during the pandemic. And in fact, our number of female-led businesses is down. It's still at 40% for Futurepreneur, but it was at 46% in the year prior, in 2019. And I think that's because women are just doing more at home. And so I think pick the partner, you know, whether you're in a woman-woman relationship or a woman-male relationship, pick the partner who will care about your career and invest in your career alongside you.
Amazing insight. Thank you. Thanks, Karen.
And Rob, if I could just say this quickly, I really have to pay this tribute. I'm sorry, because I am at this table because of my CEO, Rob Patterson, you know, who was supposed to be sitting here. And he said, Susan, I think you should be there. So it's also that allyship that is extremely important in recognizing, you know, how to bring women and diverse women up the ladder. Thank you.
No, so powerful. Thanks for sharing, Susan. Okay, we are, I think, about 15 minutes behind, which means I believe we're just going to shrink our breakout session a little bit. We did have 30 minutes. We're probably down to 15 to 20, unless one of the Enactus team members wants to jump in and tell me I'm wrong. But what that means is Cody's going to push us all now to pre-planned breakout rooms. I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions. There are so many amazing questions here, but a great opportunity for us to maybe talk about those questions in the breakout room. So let's move to the breakout session, and then we'll be back around, I think it's around 12:15. We will be back as a team. Over to you, Cody.